Alright guys, so I'm on my way up to Jackson to see Chuck. He rebuilt steering columns, plus he sell parts for steering columns. So Big Bob told me about them. I talked to him once before, and then when I talked to him today, he told me to come up and he had shown me a few things. Now, I didn't tell him that I do a YouTube channel, so I don't know if he's gonna let me film or not to put on the channel, but I'm hoping he'll let me film so I remember everything that he's telling me. Because like the 69 column for like probably the Sabre, Wildcat, Electra, all of them are gonna be the same columns, and even in 70, but the 69 and the 70 had two different like different parts on the inside, so they changed the column from 69 to 70, which I found interesting. So he's gonna tell me how to convert. He say the 70 is better than the 69 because the 69 can loosen up. So he's gonna show me how to convert the 69 over to the 70. It might not be much to it, but you know, he's gonna talk me through it or whatever. So I had off work today, so I said, let me go on up here and talk to Chuck while I got off, because you know, by me driving construction, once we get busy, we liable to be busy the rest of the summer. So, and I don't know if Chuck be up there on Saturdays or not. So I said, let me go on up here and check him out. So I'm headed on up here to Jackson now, guys. All right, all things Buick.
Highway 60.
That's
Every
a neat little
Thursday
show.
night they have a cruise night. Everybody comes over there with their old cars, so if you get a chance, Thursday night.
All right, Chuck. First off, can I get your name for the channel?
Chuck Schuster.
Chuck. All
And
right.
then
And what's the
this
name of
summer,
the
The name of the
starting
company is
June
Parts
1st,
Finders.
Parts
they have
Finders?
VFW posting
like
Key
this.
Wascom.
Easiest
My
way to
friends
get a hold of
in
me, right there.
He's got
All right.
he's got a mint 70 Chevelle.
262
I don't know if you know that.
677
Cruise night at the
0477.
Wascom. So if you
All
get a
right.
chance on Tuesday,
So how long you been doing this, Chuck?
This is my 50th year in
50
business.
years. Wow.
So
Just doing columns.
I used to put a stamp a number on a column, and I was up to about 3,000, and I got number 13 back for a rebuild. They had sold the car, and the guy wanted it rebuilt, and I said, well, it's under warranty. He said, what do you mean? I said, I already did this one. So I only needed a couple things. There was some cosmetic damage to it, but we're up to about 12,000 now.
All right.
So
So I guess my question, you just told me to bring some stuff, but I
Right.
just, you say you can swap out.
yeah,
And
put that on hold for a minute. I'm going to go get something to show you. So
Can I walk back? You mind showing me around?
sure, come on back.
All right.
6:30.
Oh, excuse me. All right.
885. This is my mess. This is I've been here for 12 years, and I wanted a way to display something that I could take that board to the car shows with the swap meet. I could just hang it up, and I can show steering wheels. So
Right.
I'll put dash pads and what have you here. But
So what all you do here?
I rebuild tilt steering columns, restore steering wheels, I restore bucket seats, consoles,
All right,
tacking
hold
gauges.
on. All right. So what do you do?
Okay, well, we rebuild steering columns. That's really the heart of my business. These are some cores I picked up in the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
I usually go through about 300 to 500 cores a year. I don't rebuild or sell that many in a year, but I buy them when I can buy them. So basically, everybody says, well, you just take it apart and clean it up. What we actually do is take the column apart and harvest the parts. And whatever's junk, we throw away. And then we build what we can out of it as we need it. So there's some columns I buy that have a couple valuable parts and the rest is junk. But
Really?
I got a hard time throwing them away. You know, I tell myself, any steering column, tilt or standard, is worth, no matter how bad it is worth $25. There's one part that somebody needs. And you know, with your car, I've got a lot of 63 to 66 big car Buicks in that, and you can't get the steering column parts for it. Nobody makes them.
Right.
So I
right.
make the cable, I rebuild the switches, and I can rebuild one of those columns and make bearings.
So when you say the
adapters.
switches, that's
Yeah, that ignition switch there, and then this is the directional switch.
oh, okay.
People go $25 for a bearing adapter, and I says, well, why don't you buy a column? They're about $100. That's
Right.
where I get the parts from. I have to buy a column to get that part.
Get
They
the
don't
column.
understand that. But
Wow.
yeah, so as time goes on, we actually manufacture some of the parts for some of the early A-body columns. But yeah, the big car stuff's a hit and miss, but it's out there. And then it's unfortunate, but somebody says, you know, I can't find any Buick Electras in the junkyard. I said, well, I'm going to tell you something you're not going to want to hear. I said, so not too long ago, less than 10 years ago, the price of scrap was $500
Oh
a
yeah.
ton.
Yeah, they
So
crush.
now you walk through the junkyard, if you own the junkyard, are you going to take that Buick Electra or are you going to take the Vega in? The Vega and Corvair can wait, you know, because they don't weigh much, but that's where they went.
Yeah, yeah, they junked a lot of them.
Yeah,
So,
man.
so why don't you manufacture stuff for the big body cars?
So the big body car can be short. Okay.
For a restaurant.
Okay, all the way back here. That's all I have. I'm sorry. I'll apologize now, but it's fine. Nobody's died. Several people have used it.
Get over.
So the full-size column, which has this style step in it, is the same as square body pickup, but it's longer. So I can buy that column and shorten it, add some parts to it, make a Camaro column. That's very valuable.
Oh, really?
But I have a cheat sheet that gives me the dimensions.
He was washing his hands. It's all good.
Oh, okay. Well,
It's all good. I'm
we're
like,
clean people.
no.
So we're in the process of putting an ADA bathroom up here in front. It's about 10 years overdue. We've snuck by. I don't own the building. I'm helping the landlord with it. But so anyway, what I do is when I get a 69 or 70, a Riv or an Electra or whatever, what I'll do is I'll record the length and any differences of it. And what I want to do is an actual print, draw up a print of it that I have it for reference.
Oh, okay.
A library that I can refer to. And I do have core columns for the big cars in boxes that I haven't touched. So I usually have a core here that for reference.
You say you can shrink them?
Yeah, so basically, let's grab the couple of parts. Follow me. Okay, that's it. That's all I get today.
All right, nice meeting you.
Yeah, same here.
All right, I'll see you at one of the shows.
Well, yeah, I'll see you there.
All
See
right.
you, Chuck.
So, okay. So this is the outer mast of a column. This is sandblasted and painted. We bead blast everything and paint everything in pieces
Okay.
and assemble it. So what GM did is they assembled the column. Some of the stuff was primered, some was bare metal, and they painted it because it was inside the car.
Okay.
All that overspray goes inside the column and affects the switches, the bearings, all that. So I don't do it that way. But so the difference here is the length from here to here. So this I can compress. These lines here, this column was in an accident, was compressed at one time. Inside here is a plastic jacket
Bob was telling me about that.
with ball bearings, and it pushes in and collapses. So after I blast these, I can visually look at this and tell you this is 25 3/4.
Okay.
But I measure every single one before I put it together, because if it's an 1/8 inch off or a 1/4 inch off, you're going to be, fooling around with it trying to get it to fit the car.
Right.
So that's the first part. We'll grab the shift tube. Now there's a couple ways to do this. I don't hide it, but this is this one was altered. So this is the inside shift tube. It's blasted. This one's got a little rust. That's a Wisconsin. I do have nicer ones. The higher end guys want it plated, so this is actually zinc plated.
Okay.
Okay, so I got the new bushings that go here, but I changed the length of it. This collapses just like the other one, and there's a plastic injection in here. You can glue it, put it back together with an epoxy, and it'll collapse. But this also is your shifter. So even if you have a floor shift car, this still moves because that's the back drive that locks your steering column.
Right.
So if that plastic breaks, which I've seen it, or the glue you put on there breaks, now you got to take the column apart and do it again.
Wow.
So what I do is I don't blast it or clean it, and I real cold, I MIG weld it, and then I finish it off. So because this here's got a real close tolerance, it'll rub on the column if there's a weld on here.
Okay.
So
So you have to
Right,
weld it
so
and grind it
now
down.
we got that length, and then the center shafts.
Thanks again, Chuck.
Okay, thank you guys. picture over here. So the center shaft has got two little injection holes. So inside this shaft, it has a groove cut in it right here and right here. And they take a hot glue gun kind of a thing. It's plastic, and they inject that, and it comes out, and you got a little squiggly there. So for a safety factor, I want it stronger than that, but I want it to break. So this one here wasn't compressed. If it was, I drill a hole through here 3/16, and I used to use a pin, but they're too flexible. So I bought threaded screws, plastic screws like for a license plate.
Right.
And I can force it, pound on it, it'll go right through. I just take a cold chisel and cut it off, and it looks like a factory deal. And now you got some protection. You know, it's not going to collapse on you as easy.
Right.
And it will collapse if necessary. So this one here is marked 12. So 12 o'clock means there's a notch here and a notch here. So that's 12 o'clock. If it was a 3 o'clock, this notch would be over here like this.
Okay.
So it has to be the right one. Guys are building columns, they're using the wrong parts, and they think that they're all the same. So now your steering wheel's not straight.
Okay.
You know, so that's something I learned.
When you put it in, I
Right.
understand. I understand. So now, tell me this. I see you sell all the sleeves here. Can you change a non-tilt into a tilt?
No. So I buy non-tilt columns, and basically I'm using the shift tube, the bearing and bearing adapter off the bottom. And people goes, well, you can buy a new bearing. I said, yeah, they're $56.
Right.
Okay. And
Right.
they're sold for a Jeep purpose. That's who makes it. Crown Industries makes them. And I'm not afraid to tell you, they look really pretty.
Right.
They're garbage.
Okay.
So they're about 10,000ths undersized. The bearing is supposed to snap in a plastic adapter, and that outer case is supposed to be locked where it holds, and the bearings are supposed to turn. This whole thing rotates.
Right.
The cheap one, and what it does, it eats up the plastic. So I
And you sell them.
I sell the used ones reconditioned. I don't use the aftermarket because I don't like them.
Okay, but I thought you recondition. I thought you said you make certain.
Okay, I make a bearing adapter for the early columns.
Okay.
And I've got a retrofit bearing that's better than what GM used.
Okay.
So, you know,
Okay.
there's thousands of things to talk about. So let's talk about a column loosening up. So you get in the car and it's all loose. So you watch the YouTube channel. You know,
Right.
I'm a big hero for YouTube. You know, it's a lot of people that don't know much that are sharing what they know. That's my
Right.
opinion. So the guy says, well, you can reach in here with a swivel and tighten up all 3 screws.
Yeah.
Yes, you can, but
Yeah.
one will slip because you can't get on it.
Right.
The problem is there's 4 screws, not 3.
It's 4.
Yeah.
Really?
So if you follow me,
Yeah, because I've been told 3 screws.
well, I can show you. So when I show people, you know, what do you do when you rebuild these? You just wipe them off with an oily rag and paint them, you know? Well, this is the top of that mast I just showed you, the part that was blasted. And if you
Okay.
look here, there's a hairline crack right here.
Right.
Okay, so no big deal. We can weld that up, right? It'll be strong.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now this is stretched right here. It's been going like this, and it stretches. So if I weld that, it's going to lift this up a little bit. Now it's crooked. So now you get in your car, and you got the top down, and you got to lean this way because the column tilts this way. It's not straight anymore. So you think that's not bad. Well, as it gets bad, it cracks all the way across here. Okay, now it's more flexible. And if you let it go, this happens, and the top breaks off. So now you're driving a car with no steering. And I always tell people the 2 most important things on a car are brakes and steering.
Brakes and steering.
And without brakes, you can still coast into a parked car or a curb or something, but without steering, it's going to go where it wants to.
Right.
So it's kind of important, but that's, so this, we're talking about 3 and 4 screws. This is a support, it's called. This sits on top of this tube, like this, and there's an anchor point that goes in here. Wafers into these holes, and there's 4 screws that tighten it up. You can count them, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Wow.
Now when that loosens up, this happens. So this was on a loose one, and as it's rocking back and forth, it's doing this. And this cracks.
Oh,
Once that cracks,
okay.
there's no support. So when you tighten up the YouTuber with the 3 screws, guess what?
That
It's just
one
going to
is
loosen
still.
up again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just going to, because there's no support here. So this here is real tight, and it's supported on the tube slides in here, and it's supported by the 2 surfaces. Well, over here, it's only supported by the inside. So, and that's, I used to weld them up and then I realized it was crooked, it wasn't right. So what I do, it scares a lot of people, but I built a fixture that holds that tube and I cut the top of it off and throw it away.
Oh, really?
So those little front wheel drive Forenzas and Olds Omegas and that nobody's restoring,
Right.
I buy those columns for this part and the upper shaft.
And
So-
they pretty much interchangeable, a lot of them, huh?
Well, they use a lot of the same parts, but almost every column is different. You know,
Oh, okay.
Let's look at that upper shaft we were talking about.
A lot of knowledge here, guys.
So these are upper shafts that I'm reconditioning. So when I'm done with them, they're in a bag with a ball set in them, ready to go. So,
And I'm gonna need one of them.
yeah, so this has got a nut now. I run a thread chaser, been sitting here for 5 years, on and off of here with a Milwaukee rechargeable drill that I know it screws on, because I don't want you to call me and tell me, oh, there was no nut on there and now it's stripped.
Right.
You know, now what do we do? Take the whole column apart? So that's ready to go. So this ball here is nice and tight. It's got a spring. This is like a horseshoe in between the two pieces, and it keeps constant pressure on it. So this one here has got threads on it right here. That's where that nut goes on it. So trying to think, we can go over and look at the parts, I guess would be the easiest. So in '69, that was the first year for that style column with a key in it. So what they did, I'll show you by your parts in a minute. Let's take this stuff up there and let's grab that shaft. You're gonna have to edit this to get rid of all the nonsense, right?
I'll be all right. All this knowledge, you might have to go through the whole thing.
Yeah. So the center section has a bearing on the top and bottom. There's a race right here. It's the same as, I don't see yours, but it's the same. It's in the top race. So this goes on here like so.
Yeah, because I got the column in the car. I just didn't know.
And this goes on top of here, and this is like it's kind of like a crush washer race. When you tighten this nut up on here, it pushes this down into the race and it's tight. And this one spins on pretty easy, so it's probably, the plastic's probably wore out. Now you can use Loctite. The problem is when you flex this, this moves back and forth a little bit, it expands and this unscrews. So what they did in...
And this was in '69
Right.
that had this...
some of the 70s will have it, but what they did in 70 they started is this race went on just like it did in '69, but then instead this is the crush washer and it keeps constant pressure. Slides on here.
and you
it pushes
can
down.
you can interchange them.
Yes, and this spring goes on here. So once you put the lock plate back on, yours has got a real wimpy spring right here. Once you put the lock plate on with this heavy spring, there's constant pressure pushing this down. So that bearing never wobbles or loosens up on you.
Okay.
It's a better setup.
Okay.
We can talk about, this is a key buzzer switch. A lot of people don't like them because they buzz when you leave the key in a car. There's a reason for it. This plastic dries out, and sometimes this one still works, but it's really fragile. They make two after this. They make a white plastic one that's real rubbery and you can bend it and it won't crack. And then they make one piece without this. This is built into it, and that's not until like '78. I use both of them. I put them in, you know, if the guy doesn't like the key buzzer, you can always go to the directional switch and unplug 2 wires and it's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
So do you sell these or no?
Yeah, I have those.
Okay, you sell them. Okay.
Now this is a '69, '70 cancel cam. If you notice, it's smooth here. There's no marks in it. Now, if you look at this one over here, this is a 71 and 2 style. It's got a little push and turn thing for a locking ferrule. Now, this is actually a 69 column that I built, and I put that in there for a reason, because if you got a sport wheel and you assemble it, with this, sometimes the inside...
I'm putting a sport wheel in this car.
Okay. I would go with this, and then I'll give you the pin and bushing for it, because what happens is that thing will pop out one day, and then you got all the mess in your steering wheel, and it shorts out. So if you have a standard steering wheel with the 3 bars and the push buttons, that snaps into here. You can't change it. You'd have to change the ferrule. If you wanted to use this side, you have to change it. But if you're going to use a sport wheel, that's what I would use. Okay. It's a better setup.
All right. Well, see, I learned that's new too.
Yeah.
All right.
What other? See the difference in these 2 springs? If you're going to go with this, you can't use this. You have to use the bigger spring. See, there's hardly any pressure there with that nut because the nut's up taller. Okay. So I've got guys that want the same parts put back in their car, and I use that. I've got probably a couple hundred of these done, and I probably have 1,000 of these. So, I mean, I save them. This is the same all the way up into the 80s, you know, this style here. This is 69 and part of 70. So it's not what I would put in the car.
And is a difference between these, or just
the way they keep the pressure on the lock point? So
pressure.
Yeah, this here race is different. This is the same. This race is different. And they use a stiffer spring. Okay. But I'm trying to. There's a reason I can't put this stuff on this, and I don't think the diameter is right here because I think the race is up here on the threads and it's sloppy. That's what it is.
And this is the original one.
Right, for 6970. So right now I'm having trouble getting 67 and 8s. So I'll ask somebody, what do you do for a living? Well, you already told me you're a truck driver. Okay, so I might have a question about gravel from a job that I want for my new house. How do I get free fill? And I was told a long time ago, walk around the job site where they're working and look for the guy with the white hat. That's the guy you talk to. That's who you do. So the 67 and 8, this is threaded all the way up to here, and it's smaller diameter. So I found a millwright, and he says, I can do a program to turn this down to the right size and drill a hole in the middle of it and put a pin out of a non-tilt shaft inside, press it in, and put Loctite on it. And then just for your safety, he would drill a hole behind this race and put a pin in it and put the race over it. Now I've got a shaft that nobody makes. Oh, wow. So I'm trying to make the 7 and 8. Let me walk around here and I'll show you. So the hardest column to find right now is the 67 or 8. It used to be the 64 to 6. And these are all done here for sale. This is a 66 Chevelle. I manufacture everything on here except the center section. So on these, this is a drawn piece of metal. I've got the dies to expand it. This is machined by hand, the holes, everything. It's identical to a 66 Chevelle. So this right here is different, and it's Chevelle only, 66 only. Oh, really? It's a $1,500 column. They're very, very hard to find. So on a real floor shift, this bowl doesn't move. It's welded, and there's no shift tube in here, and there's no lever coming out. So the guy will chop off the lever and weld it so it doesn't move, and the tube's still here. It doesn't affect anything, but it's a bunch you don't need. So you should be able to see a center shaft right in here on a real floor shift. Right. So a friend of mine passed away in Michigan, and him and I were working on this, and he says, I'll make this mast. I got a guy that can expand those. Can you get the bowl made? And I had a guy, these were metal spun originally, and I had a guy take a metal spin, and I made them, and I ordered 200 of them, and I got 80 of them. And the guy that was doing them was 85, but was his father, and he says, I don't want to do it anymore. Because he said, we went through 300 blanks. Now I've metal spun some aluminum. It's an art form that you don't see anymore. Right. So I'm thinking, well, I would really like the ribs in here. On a CNC machine, they measure this point, and it's a standard taper. So what I like about this is, if this was sheet metal and I dropped it on the floor, there'd be a flat spot in the sheet metal. I'm not going to, but if I drop this, it'll bounce up and I can catch it because this is stainless. Stainless, yeah. It's a lot better product, and you're getting the right thing when you're done. And it's new. So there's no pitting in the outer mast. So when he died, I bought his parts, and we agreed on a price. And I paid the price. He said, there'll be a surprise from you. Well, he wanted to fit one of these bowls. I didn't know he had them made. So when I went there, he had 100 of these outer masts and 100 bowls.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, they're gone now. In 5 years, I sold them all.
You sold them all.
But, I'm in the process of making them again. So there's a lot of alterations. I mean, on 69 to 72 A body, a lot of them are the same. This is a common automatic shift lever, okay? I don't have one here, but on a 4-speed, it's a straight lever like this, and it's only that long. And the reason they do that on Chevelle and Buick is the exhaust manifolds are so wide at that point, the motor, it's hard to get by it to install it at the factory.
Okay.
So they made it shorter. So.
And you say there's no way to turn.
No, the bowls are completely different. So the biggest thing is the outer mast is different. The shift tube is different. The bowl is different. There's not enough there to make it. You know, so
the change of
right.
standard
it's not
to a
cost
tilt.
effective. So I can take a non-tilt and retain this shift tube and retain the Julian date code on the column. If the guy's doing a high-end restoration, he wants that number.
Right.
And I can change the top of it to a tilt, but I got to add tilt parts. I still have to have a tilt to get those parts. You know, I can't buy all the pieces.
Oh, I
So,
see what you're saying.
yeah.
You
You know,
can't.
so the center shaft is different because the non-tilt doesn't have this. It's just a straight shaft.
So, is it a big difference between a big body tilt and a small body like
Well, it depends
Like for
on
the
who you
sit-
talk to and where you go. So you go to a swap meet, if you walk up to me with your YouTube hat and it says 69 Camaro on it, I know you're looking for a 69 Camaro. So a lot of the guys will write 69 Camaro on the column while you're, as you're walking up. Well, here, I got a column for you. I've seen it. I've seen it done. And the thing is I would rather show you the difference and
Right.
say, that's a 69 Camaro and that's an A body, or that's an Impala. It's an inch and a half longer. So.
but
I look at it this way. I'd rather have you buy the right part, whether you buy
This
it from me
piece
or not.
in here though, where's the piece that
There's
this
a non-tilt right here. That's a non-tilt.
this,
problem.
this piece here,
Right.
you can't take this and put this into a big body column like
Yeah, that center section, I'll show you one. So this is a non-tilt. See how the bowl, 1, 2, 3?
right.
On a tilt, this is all one. It's molded.
It's molded,
but
right.
it goes together differently inside. So what I do, in 78, they came out with a 2-piece tilt bowl. If you look over here on this cutlass column, I use that 2-piece bowl. I actually cut the length down. I machine this notch in it and this notch here. And it's effective, it works. But these columns have a better interlock system in them because that's when they were stealing all the cars. So if that guy busts up your column, he's not going to drive it away.
Oh really?
Yeah, it's gonna bind inside. It's really a neat. Let me get a center section here to show you the amount of parts. We're ready for some concrete.
I'm following you.
So when I rebuild these, this is what it looks like when I'm done. I do 100 of these at a time. If I did one of these,
Wow.
it would take me 2 hours to take. So to take it apart, to take all this out, and to take the bearings out and clean it. So if you don't clean this, any residue or sand or garbage or dried out grease is going to be in here. And what happens is these don't release. See how they snap back nice? I talked to a guy from Saginaw Steering one day for hours at a seminar. And this here center pin presses in there is a dowel pin, and it's center ground, which means it's a machine part that's perfect. And that's steel. It's not hardened. It's close, but it's not. This here is cast steel. So steel and steel will rust. So sometimes you pull this lever and it doesn't release back. Right now you can see it moves. Some of them are. So if you get in the car and grab the steering wheel and it drops down, that's what's wrong. So what I do is I bore the hole out in here 3/1000ths. And it's not sloppy. I oil them, so there's oil in there. It's going to last you your lifetime. But I clean the bearings. When this is out, I take a die grinder with a small wire wheel that expands, and I polish up that race and look at it. If it's all galled up from a rusty bearing, I throw it away. I'm actually building a fixture right now to hold this, to push the bearing race in here, in and out, and the same thing down here. And the same thing, I mean, I've got probably $1,000 already in this fixture. It's going to push this pin out with a hardened bolt, and it'll push it back in. So there's no, I'm not tapping on it with a hammer and a punch. And right now, I can do one in a vise without damaging it, but every so often you're going to break one. If you bend this, that's where the pin goes through. The jaws are going to be crooked and they're not going to lock right. So then you might as well throw it away. But this here collects grease behind it. This is not grease. I don't grease them until I'm ready to assemble it, just because you're handling the grease. So I leave this. There's a little play in here. I leave a little play in there. And when I'm ready to assemble it, I put some transmission oil in here. I turn it over and I put it in here, and it works in there. And then I pull this back like so and expose the teeth. And I put a little grease in here and I run it up and down. And it works like butter.
Okay.
So if you notice, this has got a real wide opening here. In 69 and 70, that pin is small and they break off. It breaks this cam off. I could show you the two pieces. I've got hundreds of them, but I prefer to put this in. But it's hard to find the actuator rods with the big pin, so I have to use what I have. But this here pin is a late model. It's reduced right here and it's larger up here. The original ones, this is probably 78 or newer. 77 it is. So this here is a relief for dirt. So this goes into an aluminum housing. So you can grab one, I can slide it on there. I don't machine the last hole. We'll see if this one sticks. That one slid right on. Okay, so if this here pin sticks, your steering wheel is not going to lock. But what's worse than that is one day it's going to get tired in the down position because of the spring, and it's going to pop up and be frozen when you're driving. Then you can't turn the steering wheel.
What?
So that's why I take it apart. Nobody that I know of takes these apart. That rebuilds them. There's two other major rebuilders. We'll just leave them anonymous right now.
That's good.
They look at it and they say, well, you don't have to do that, Chuck. You can just soak it in lacquer thinner and get the paint off and paint it. Well, that's not the important part. It's the function, you know. So I'm the only one that takes them apart, and that's why. So I do 100 of these, and I might get 3 or 4. There's something wrong with it. So it's kind of like rebuilding a starter. The starter shop, the motor shop takes 100 apart, and they mix up all the parts. Well, I'm doing the same thing. Now I start to put this together, and this doesn't work. I'll set it aside and I'll grab another one. And then one day I'll take those 4 or 5 when I got nothing to do, and I'll take it out and I'll roll this on a flat machinist platform, and it'll have a loop in it. That's why it's bent. That's why it's locking up.
Okay.
So, you know, you find the problem with it. I don't throw it away. I can usually come up with the answer why something doesn't work. But so that's really the heart of the tilt. It's got the tilt. It's got the lock point that locks the column. It's got bearings, the rack that's